And so now that we see all of that is misaligned, none of that is working anymore. And you start to see the collapse in our society of that trust. And we have to start doing things differently as individuals and within our smaller communities and families. We have to start living our lives in a very different way because the system, the box, is not real.
We're tired of the rules, tired of the shame, tired of pretending it's all the same. We're tired of the hustle that cuts us in two. We're tired, but we're stronger. We're breaking on through. We're tired as fuck, but we won't back down. We're tired as fuck, still owning this town.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back into We Are Tired AF. And today we are tired as fuck of trying to fit into the box. I'm air quoting there, the box. So specifically, we're going to be talking about what the box actually even is. What is like a normal career path? How are we deciding what productivity looks like? Where does the standard for what's professional even freaking come from? And who gets to decide the rules and the punishments that come along with that disobedience for not fitting into the box? So, big topic, but super important based on what we are going through in the world right now. And so I guess I want to start out kind of on the macro level with you ladies and thinking about, first kind of societally, right? Cultural norms, even our employers and whomever we work for or work with. What are some of the things that you're seeing or that you've experienced when you've been trying to fit into the box?
That's a big question.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of ways that you can think about that, right? Like I personally, one of my big experiences is coming up in tech because I worked in the Silicon Valley and I was a very, very fat woman and I was very outspoken and I was undiagnosed neurodivergent. And so I think I just approached the world in a very different way. And so a lot of things didn't make sense to me. And so I would just call them out because I thought that's what you did when things don't make sense to you. And so I had this habit of gaining entry into some of these really privileged places, like these tech companies, and then getting in there and realizing like, it's never what I thought it was. And the way that feels natural for me to operate is always going to be punished. And a thing that you said early on really perked up my ears because you were talking about obedience. And I feel like that is one of the biggest unlocks I had later in life where I was like, what I thought was like actual intelligence and success and creativity that was driving people forward was actually, no, they're better at obeying than I am. They're more obedient than I am. And that's why they're more successful.
Wow. And this goes all the way back to college for me. I grew up in a small Texas town. I went to the University of Houston. I was undecided between a pre-med major and an English major because I didn't know what like. I still had that leaning of, smart girls are supposed to go into law or medicine or something like that. And I was fascinated with medicine, still am. But I found out really quickly that I didn't want to spend 10 years of my life doing science and then the rest of my life serving people in that way. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And I ended up in a creative writing program. And even there, the idea of fitting into a box was important. You didn't want to write genre fiction because genre fiction is not real artistry, right? That doesn't count. And also, you should be writing something that is meaningful. And who says what is meaningful? It's the people that come in and teach your class, and it's the people that happen to be the people that we're listening to today. It is all of those authorities determine what is worthwhile. And if you're not doing the things that are worthwhile, then you're not fitting even in the artist box. And then there was this whole group of artists also that just didn't consider writers to be artists. So there was even on that side of things where things are supposed to be more open and creative and free, there was very much a box in the 90s. that we were meant to fit into. And of course, from there, I walked into tech and started, I did grad school. And then when I got into tech, it was very much like either do it the way we want you to do it or belong.
What about you, Mel? I mean, we're 2 Gen Xers and 1 elder millennial who I think were kind of presented a specific path of what success looked like. What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have never fit into any of the boxes. And I knew that pretty early on, right? I mean, I've talked in my origin story about being, the only Black person in an all white household. If you saw me in school, you saw this group of, 50 white kids and this little chocolate drop in the middle, right? Once I started working, I've always been pretty clear because I knew early on that like I wasn't going to be the person that was going to be to work on time. Mornings are just not my thing. And so I've always felt like whatever the norms, whatever the standards that, you're supposed to work a 9 to 5 and you're supposed to, give 110%. And, if you just work hard enough, all these fake structures about what's expected of you. I knew like I just wasn't going to be able to do that. I didn't quite know why, right? I didn't get my ADHD diagnosis until recently. So I physically couldn't have, I don't think if I wanted to, without a lot of extra stress that I'd have to carry. But I have always found that what the standard was, what the box was, like somehow I was never in it. I was always kind of on the outside, climbing in, like peeking in, like, what am I supposed to be doing? Because I just can't. It just doesn't quite fit. And so I've always had this experience of being the outsider in some way. And it's always been fascinating for me to see how do people make it work? How do people fit in? And I think to your point, Courtney, of the disobedience and that not being what's required of people, I'm also not great at following orders as far as it comes to being obedient.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
Any systems that I have bucked against have always been when someone came up with some bullshit reason why things had to be this way that didn't make any sense. And I was always the person to stand up and say, I'm sorry, wait a minute, I have a question. Because I'm not going to do that.
Okay, can I just tell you something? This is something my mom, who, had a daughter in the 80s, raised me to, how we were all raised in the 80s of like, make your own money, take care of yourself, you can do anything, right? Which had a double-edged sword to it in a lot of ways, right? But one of the things I love that my mom instilled in me is she's like, it's teachers and educators and people in power, it's their job to make something make sense to you. It's not your fault if you don't understand something. That's not your child. So if you need somebody to explain something differently, if you don't get it, you never feel ashamed saying, I don't get it. You need to help me understand that. So I'm like, I at least had my parents in my corner in that way. Right. But like, Mel, my big question for you, because I feel like, you talk about realizing that really early. And Sandra, you've talked about that some too. So I guess I'm posing this question to both of you. Did you have shame about that? About not being in the box? Did you ever have shame about that?
Yeah. I don't know if shame is the word. I felt guilty that I couldn't figure it out, that I couldn't figure out how to get into the box. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I don't know that I felt shame about it. I felt guilty within. Like I internalized this feeling of not being enough. Like I must not be enough if everybody else is doing it. Why can't I conform?
Why can't I? What's wrong with
and do it? Yeah. How about you, Sandra?
I was on the other end of that. I always felt like I was too much. There was something just like, and I did feel shame over this. As an autistic, I didn't know it when I was a child, but oh my God, I would have loved to have had the how to be an adult, how to be a human being manual that it seemed like everybody else had. Because I would try. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to play with other people. I wanted things to work. I really did. And like, no matter what I did, I always did it wrong. And I would think that I'd had it figured out. And then I'd try again and I'd get it wrong again. Right. So if I did it so that the teachers liked it, the students would be pissed at me. If I did it the way the students liked it, the teachers would be pissed at me. I actually had teachers that literally told me in these words that if I would just play dumb, that I would get along better with people. And luckily I had my mom. I told my mom that. And my mom said, don't you ever, don't you
Yeah.
ever. Thank goodness. I had that. My mom really reinforced that. But the shame of never being able to get things right and never knowing what it is that I'm doing wrong impacted me enough that by second grade, I wasn't telling my parents what was going wrong at school anymore. So they couldn't have come to my defense because when they came to my defense, everything just got worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just stopped telling them. That's how deep the shame went for me.
And then you just
Yeah.
internalize that even more.
just
And
internalized.
then that just turns into like,
Right.
You know, I am wrong. That's what it became for me. I am wrong. And that is a character default that continues to come up. When something goes wrong, I still hit the I am wrong space.
same.
Even when I know that that is not the case. Even when I know that I am the expert and other people are not listening to me, I still think, man, I presented it wrong. I didn't, and I have to work against that
Yeah.
to build up my own self-esteem.
I mean, it's years of conditioning, right?
Mhm.
Like it is years of conditioning. And I think the data supports this, that like women are diagnosed later with autism,
Mhm.
ADHD, CPTSD, right? Like we get our diagnoses later. It just is. The data supports it. We don't study women the same way. We don't account for our hormones. God help you if you got a late diagnosis and now you're in perimenopause or menopause, because they don't fucking study that either. But we know that like neurodivergent women burn out faster and have years and years of internalized self-blame. Like it is such a common thread among any late diagnosed neurodivergent woman I have ever spoken to. The same story happens over and over again, and you get trapped in a little prison where you're like, this is me. I'm broken. I'm not good enough. Everybody else can do it. And I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I mean, Mel, I know we've talked about this and you didn't because your school situation and being a young teen mom but everything. Sandra, were you in the gifted program?
There were no gifted programs in my hometown.
Yeah.
I went to a school where there was an honors program, which became an honors college. And that honors program recognized that honors students who have really excelled in high school are often at-risk students because they are not necessarily prepared for the rigor that is going to be required at college. And they've never had a place where they could do other things besides just school.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them just, they get to socialize for the first time in their lives and they end up not doing things or all of this. And now we know that a lot of those people are neurodiverse.
Totally.
And that they're having to face that outside of structure for the first time in their lives.
Yeah.
So I did have that, but I didn't have it until I went into college. And thank goodness I did, because it did save me from a tremendous amount of anxiety.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you had that experience. I had kind of the inverse experience where I'm sure some of our listeners will have experienced this. It depends on, I'm sure, where you grew up and what your school district was, but we had something called GATE, the Gifted and Talented Education Program or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but I just remember like later telling my therapist, because she was like, no, you are neurodivergent and you're really smart. And I was like, no, I'm really stupid. I just don't get things. Like I spent my whole life thinking I was dumb. Right. And she's like, no, you were in GATE. Like I know what GATE is. And I'm like, yeah, I tricked him. She's like, no, you didn't. They tested that. Like they tested kids for that. You did not trick them into getting into GATE. But like they would take us out of, it was a weird program. They would take us out of classes and we'd go do weird things like dissect squids and shit. Like it was weird. But I just remember that label of like, well, you're gifted and talented. You're different. You're gifted and talented. And then that continued all the way into like my corporate career in tech, where it's like, you have so much potential. All these big companies want to hire you. Oh, you're gifted and talented. And then you get in there and you can't do it. And you're not quite right. And you're one step behind and you're always on the outside. And you're like, well, I did the thing you told me. I thought we were doing the thing and saying the thing. And so how come I'm in trouble? And it's like, it became like a boomerang of like, I felt even more shame because I was like, well, I was supposed to be gifted. I was supposed to have all this potential and I must have wasted it.
Yeah.
I hear that from so many. Please go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the advantage perhaps that I had, that I somehow miraculously created by myself, because I didn't have like a cheer squad of parents that were like, yay.
Yeah.
Which I turned out to be for my kids, because we all need that, right? So I'm really glad that you both had that for sure. But for me, I just always felt like I was right. Like I never felt like I was wrong. I just always felt like I was right. But then I couldn't figure out why being right wasn't enough. So
Yeah.
for me, it was, I know that I'm right. I've thought this through. Like I've come up with all the scenarios and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that I'm right, but why is being right not enough to fit into this alleged box? And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I say, like, it wasn't the shame because I knew I was right. I
Right.
just couldn't figure out how to get people to see that and acknowledge it in certain
Yeah.
instances, or they would. But then it was like, well, especially if it were like men that I was on a team with, like, well, okay, yeah, you're right, but I'm more right because of X, Y, and Z,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
right?
there is some concept of being right and righter.
Yeah. 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 So that was more my challenge,
Yeah.
coming up. And because I always had to be very independent and take care of everything and everybody, that also built upon me being right. Like, well, obviously, like my children are surviving, right? I'm able to pay the bills. I'm able to make these things happen. So I know what I'm doing. I just need to get my foot into the door in certain places to show people, look at what I know. Let me come and help you with what I know. Sandra, did you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we live in a world that is run by capitalism. And
totally.
capitalism, in essence, looks at us as a resource. Human beings are a resource. And the more alike we are, the better. The better we can just be replaced by another cog, another human being. And so when we are the kind of person that doesn't follow the norms of productivity or the norms of how we do things, it's very hard for people to put us in that right place. When I started going out and looking for jobs with a creative writing degree, nobody knew what to do with me because they're like, well, what does a creative writing degree get you? Well, it gets me incredible creative thinking. It gives me critical thinking skills. It gives me the ability to listen to, absorb, and do something with critical input from others. Right? It gives me analysis skills. It gives me a whole bunch of other things. And luckily I was able to find someone who was willing to take a chance on that at one point, but I had to work hard to find somebody who would take a chance on that. Whereas everybody I knew in the 90s was studying business because everybody knew where that
Mhm.
led, right?
Right.
They could see the path to the degree, to the program, to their, and it's still something that happens. I still have a lot of friends who teach college and everybody is like, how's this going to help me in my career? How's this going to help
Right.
me in my career? And yes, there
Yeah.
is a part of college that is about helping in career, but that's not what college was ultimately designed to do. And that is not what it ever will be able to do in the format that it is in. And I would argue shouldn't.
Yeah, but
We should not have an educational system that rewards compliance over creativity and critical thinking.
that's all we have right now.
That
And
is all we have.
it's getting
Yes.
worse, right? Like it's
Absolutely.
getting so much worse to
Yeah.
reward compliance because, and this was like the big thing for me when I really started learning to trust myself. Mel, one of the things you said that's really interesting because I think you didn't have as much external support when you were younger.
Mm,
Yeah.
You had to develop your own internal authority
Right.
faster, right?
Yeah.
Like that just
true.
for survival. Whereas
Right.
a lot of women, like that comes later. That's part of the work that we all do in different ways is helping women reclaim their own internal authority and
Right.
then do something with it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really interesting because I think you had to develop that early for
Yeah.
survival.
Right.
But then
Agreed. Yeah.
I also think that late diagnosed women who can unhook from their shame and because we're pattern recognizers and you can't tell us what to do. Right. And so I think we are exactly what society needs right now because when you can actually look at the big picture in corporate and just, I'm going to pull at the thread about what we're finding out on the tertiary about our leaders from the Epstein files and how they all fucking protect abusers, you can see so clearly that people are simply products all the way up the chain. None of what we
Right.
were taught is success metrics. Success was how well can you comply to be put on the chopping block, to be
Mhm.
manipulated, right? And neurodivergent women who are like, no, I'm pulling out of that system. I need to build something different. I need to think about it different. I need to build, I don't think in a linear way. I need to build community. I need to build things spherically. It's like, well, no. Now you're fucking with stuff and you're getting people to think differently and we don't we can't have that.
Yeah. Go ahead,
And
Mel.
I think if you look at what's happening societally right now and the box, right? We had this old school version of we were raised to believe that there were three branches of government that were checks and balances for each
Yeah.
other, right? That were
Your
supposed to
laugh
be
is so
pulling
sad.
that were supposed to be pulling us towards the center so that anything that went too far left or too far right, like there was some group that was going to pull us back into the middle. And
Mhm.
so when you believe that system, and I think many of us did, right? Even if we knew it didn't work, Black people recognized like it never worked for us, but collectively we had to have hope in something.
Right.
And the hope was that there was a system of checks and balances that was going to get us back on track one way or another. And so now that we see all of that is misaligned, none of that is working anymore. And you start to see the collapse in our society of that trust, of that we thought like this was the box. This is what we're supposed to do. If we did these things, then we were to be rewarded. Now we see that's all bullshit and it's falling apart. And so you start to see this chaos that is breaking out now where people understand that they have to pull, to your point, Courtney, we have to be, focus on our own autonomy and how we're going to survive this. And we have to start doing things differently as individuals and within our smaller communities and families. We have to start living our lives in a very different way because the system, the box, is not real.
No, and as a matter of fact, the only people that are being held to the box are the people that are, working for the capitalists, right? The capitalists themselves, the people that own stuff, the people that are running the government, people that are running businesses, those people are not held in that box. They can act however they want. And you can see it, as a matter of fact. You hear people talking about Elon Musk being a genius and we just have to deal with his shit because that's what you have to do to get geniuses, whereas women who think differently are being shunted aside and silenced and in all sorts of other ways because I don't know why it's different for women than it is for men, but it is,
Yeah.
Like somehow or another, we have to tolerate really shitty behavior from a few people because somehow or another they're going to make the world a better place for the rest of us. And the rest of us just need to stay in a box and it'll be okay. But the truth of the matter is that box has never worked for any of us. And
No.
it still doesn't work. It's just that for a lot of people, it's the only comfort they've ever had.
Yeah.
Well,
no, absolutely.
and it's the box that helps perpetuate gender disparity, white supremacy, capitalists empower, right? Like it's all those things. And once you see
racism, sexism.
Yeah. And once you see that, it's really hard to unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because then you're like, okay, well, then now I know and I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility if I work for a corporate company that claims to care about X, Y, and Z, and I'm an employee tied to that, and I see my leadership doing X, Y, and Z, well, I just shouldn't say anything because you don't mix politics and work. The fuck you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
The fuck
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like that is the thing where go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I ask the next question, I just want to say Elon Musk is not a genius. He's a fraudster.
Yes, absolutely.
He's great at stealing other people's genius
Other people's ideas. Yes.
Yeah.
He's a good
grifter.
marketer. He's a good marketer.
Yeah.
He's a fucking grifter like all billionaires. He's a fucking grifter. Anybody that has that kind of money is just a dragon hoarding other people's work.
Totally. Listen, the reality is we can have a whole other episode about is there such a thing as like, ethical capitalism? I don't know. Is there? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. But like, I think there's a world where we can have like more responsible capital. Like why billionaires shouldn't exist. If you get to that much money, that wealth disparity should not exist. You should not be able to hoard that much fucking money and not give back in some way. You just shouldn't. A society can't function that way.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree. And we touched on this, a bit already, but I just wanted to kind of bring it down to kind of the micro level, right? With our family structures and our personal relationships and our own behaviors. What is it that you are noticing or have noticed in the past about those kind of internalized beliefs about fitting in and how we're kind of breaking away from that. I know we're going to talk more deeply in another episode about the specifics of how we're doing that together and individually in our own businesses. But how are you seeing that, again, kind of your families and close personal relationships and fitting in? What's been some of the struggles or challenges that you're seeing in trying to fit in those types of relationships?
Well, I've never been good at fitting in those structures.
Yeah.
I have to say, even when I was a kid, my friendships, and this is still true for me, when I care about people, I care deep, I care hard, and that is not something that goes away lightly. I still remember when I was 8 years old and my best friend moved away. She only moved 35 miles, but I was inconsolable for days. I was absolutely inconsolable for days because I knew that this fundamentally changed our relationship and it could never be the same again. And whereas I have a lot of friends who are ADHD and they've like every single one of them tell me, I don't really have relationship degradation. If I don't see you for a few months, I don't feel that as a loss. Whereas me, if you walk out the door, I miss you.
Yeah.
The moment you walk out the door, I miss you. There's a little bit of an ache there for me. And those are completely different ways of thinking about how things are supposed to be. So there's those two things, right? Number one, I'm going to go deep and fast with people. I'm no good at small talk. Number two, I'm going to miss you if you're not here. And I'm going to recognize the change that makes in our dynamic and our relationship and add to that the fact that, those two things. There was another thing. I don't remember what the thing was.
It'll come back to you.
It'll fly back in. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
go. And add to it the fact that I cannot do small talk, right? Like I cannot sit in my living room and talk about dinner and how nice the fall is and look at the leaves and all of this other kind of stuff. I will go crazy. I will go fucking nuts. I will say, yeah, but what do you think about those Epstein files? You know, how do you feel about them raping 12-year-olds? Are we doing anything about it? Why aren't you doing something about it? I can't do otherwise. I can't shut up about it and be polite.
Yeah.
So those things make me, I won't fit in, you know, even as much as I wanted to when I was a kid. I just couldn't. I couldn't.
You know, it's funny. Like I feel like I could play act fitting in better than I could ever actually fit in. And I think that that's true for a lot of neurodivergent women. Like I could choose to turn it on. And until I was diagnosed much later, I didn't realize how much that cost me internally, right? Like I knew how to play a part. I always knew how to play a part, right? And it wasn't until like my 20s and 30s and working in really toxic corporate environments that like it literally started to kill me. Right? Like play acting and trying so hard to fit in the box, trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be, right? Like, because I also was undiagnosed, I was fat, I was having health issues, I was struggling in my job. So I was just being told from everyone that it's me. You're not trying hard enough. You're not doing enough. And that's also our consumerism society. Like, well, what pill do you need? What do you need to buy? How do you need to fix yourself? Right? Like, that's just coming at you always. And I think the most dangerous unlock, and it's actually a different feeling of not fitting in the box, because I still don't fit in the box. I'll have you know. And I don't want it. That box is stupid. So it's a different disconnect now where like, I used to feel bad and shame because I'm like, I don't fit in the box. I want to be in the box. Why can't I be in the box? And now I'm like, fuck that box. That box is prison. And I'm thankful I never fit in that box. But it's lonely seeing how box that stupid is, how stupid that box is.
Right.
It is lonely.
It is.
Because I then did a lot more healing and ungaslighting of myself and setting new boundaries because I'm like, well, I'm not going to subscribe to that lane of success. And I'm not going to feel bad that I work in more cyclical ways. So I'm not going to have linear productivity the way you want me to. You can't make me feel bad about that. You can't Pomodoro me into doing that. You can't. You can't, because that's not how my brain works best. And I have recognized that.
Do you know the first bit of professional advice I was ever given? I was told to tame my hair. My hair was too curly and too wild, and I needed to tame it. If I wanted to be taken seriously, I had to get my hair in order. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Nothing about my emails, nothing about the work that I am doing. Like, the thing that you are telling me is that my hair needs to be less curly than it is. What?
Can I just say that I'm so glad that I have not had the experience of you two, because I would so be in prison for stabbing people. Like, it is so egregious to me that anybody would have the fucking nerve to say something like that they deserve to just get stabbed. I'm sorry.
And you know what happens with me? I think I'm wrong, right? Somehow I'm not doing what I'm supposed to again.
But
and
see, now
I've got to figure it out.
This goes back to the box of like, so something you said earlier, it's like we also hold people to different standards, right? Like there's a gender component to this and a race component to this too. But it's like, especially for women of color, right? And this is corporate advice that drives me crazy. You need to work on your communication style. You need to work on your executive No, you just don't want to hear anything not completely obedient from a woman or a woman of color. Right? Like that's what you're really saying. And so it's different, I think, when you like start to see that stuff and then heal some of that in yourself where you're not feeling that shame and you're like, no, I know. And I know we're going to talk about this in the next episode that like, I don't want that anymore. I see differently and I'm embracing that. I'm leaning into that and I want to like share that. There's going to be a lot of resistance. There's going to be a lot of pushback and it does feel lonely. And I think that's like an interesting evolution where I'm like, well, it's almost lonelier once you realize you don't want the box.
Yeah.
What about, I mean,
because that's supposed to be the thing that you're striving for, right? That's what we've been sold.
Right. So then when you're like, well, that's not the cheese that I've been hunting. Well, what the fuck am I hunting?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The very first job that I ever had was like a temp job. And I found like, this was something that just floored me. I saw a way to make our process more efficient. Right? Rather than having me do something and then take it over to somebody else for them to redo something else, I was like, we can tie these two Excel tables together and then they can, just literally hit a button and it'll port it over and they won't have to retype anything and all of that. And people got mad at me because it wasn't my job to make things better. And I was like, well, what does giving 100% mean then? I could not fathom what it meant to give 100% if I was supposed to not recommend improvement. And, like that's not part of the box. Yeah.
Yeah. I just did shit. Like when you were talking about systems, like I went through, like I put myself through 3 levels of Access. You remember Access? I don't think it exists anymore.
Yes,
it's like the accompaniment to Excel. So Excel likes numbers. Access
was a mini database.
Was right. It was essentially databases that were not easy to create or get information out of, but it's kind of all you had back in the day. And because I needed to get information, others needed to get information for reporting, for our grants and whatnot. And it would take literally weeks and hours to try to figure out how to get this information somewhere. So I just took it upon myself to learn Access and use Access. And I just created this system and I was like, okay, we're just going to use this. Here's how you just enter your piece in. I will run all the queries and run all the reports. Just do this. And I guess that being right, like I'm just going to figure it out and I'll just give it to you. I'm not going to ask you permission to do a thing. I'm sorry. Are you not going to use this? I mean, you're going to use it because I've done all the work. I'm doing all the work to make it happen. So that's kind of always been the philosophy for me is like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I know it's going to be great and you're going to love it. So I'm not going to wait for you to say, okay, I give you permission. You don't give me shit. I decided to do this for me and for you. So here you go. Merry Christmas.
Can I tell you, as you're telling that story, I'm like, this is why I love you. This is why we bonded so fast. And I'm like, girl, I'm like thinking of all of the times I've done that in my tech jobs in the Silicon Valley, and the men I presented to are like, oh, my ego. How dare you think you could do so? I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, it is what it is. And in tech, it's a wild, and we're seeing this, a big picture, full stage from all the shit that's coming out. These are the most, especially in the Silicon Valley, especially in the tech industry, they are the most insecure losers that are in those leadership positions. So it is to be in Silicon Valley and operate that way is to either be fired or to then just have your shit stolen from you. Because that happened to me all the time too, where it was like, fine, I would go fix it. I would go do the work. I remember I closed some multi-million-dollar deal with Intel at one time. And I'm like, a 2-level up executive who I'd never spoken to, who'd never been part of that deal, took credit for it at a global all hands. And I'm like, fucking sick. Great. You were actually an obstacle. But this is how this works. And now I understand that. Great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and that's the permission of like, we need to stop holding ourselves to this standard, especially the ladies, especially the neurodivergent ladies, especially anybody still trapped in corporate. I got a secret for you. It's all fake and they're trying to lay you all off anyway. So stop giving 100%. Stop giving 100%. Like this whole fucking rigged system is meant to extract from you. It's meant to extract from you. Like Sandra said, we're the product. They're trying to extract as much out of us as possible for their bottom line. So no, you give them 20% and they'll still, if you give them 20% and then pat their head and tell them they're smart boys, they won't notice. I swear to God, they won't notice. Downshift from 100% to 20%, pat them on the head, say, oh my God, you're so smart, you're so right. And then go do whatever the fuck you want to go do and start building your side hustle. Swear to God.
Yeah. And I do want to be clear, though, that this isn't just the corporate environment. Mel, you mainly worked in nonprofits, right? And I worked in the academic environment for many years, and it was the exact same thing. I actually had on my evaluations people saying, I'm not old enough to have I'm not old enough to bring anything of worth to a classroom. Or there was all kinds of things. And people would tell me if I dressed differently or if I presented myself differently or if I was willing to explain all of the things that I did before I came here to teach, before I started teaching, then people would listen to me more. And I'm like, my people listen to me just fine. It's just 2 or 3 people in the classroom who think that they are better than all of the rest of us who are saying something. That and the dean who doesn't like the fact that I went to a state school instead of an Ivy League. The truth of the matter is everybody else is feeling like they're getting a good education. So are you going to listen to those assholes or are you going to listen to me? And I always listen to those assholes. So it's not just the tech world. There's plenty of those fragile egos elsewhere who, when you start doing something different and that something different actually works, they will feel threatened and they will find a way to get rid of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So love that Mel didn't have the same experience that we did.
Me too.
I love that because I'm also like, I want to like wind her up like a wind up toy and then go back in time and insert her into certain things in Silicon Valley and just be like, I kind of want to see what would happen here. Like, go.
But I also want to note that like we didn't know any better. I was raised with the idea that like if you want to change the system, change it from within. Get into the system. Once you're in that box, you can do things to change the box. That never worked. Right? We never got let in the box.
Yeah.
Right? We were always barred from that box. And we're always going to be barred for that box as long as we live in a culture that is patriarchal, that is racist, that is capitalist, that is all the things that it is. Puritanical, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. I think to Courtney's point, I was feral. I essentially wasn't raised by anybody. So pros and cons, right, to being feral as from a child.
I love me a feral woman. I love me a feral
Yeah, that's
woman.
awesome.
Yeah. It's empowering. It's empowering.
Yeah.
So
This is what I think. I think the more women, especially midlife women who are neurodivergent, who are doing the work, who are doing EMDR like all of us have done, who are healing their shit, to fully embrace their feralness and build something different, that's what the world needs right now. And I know that's what we're going to talk about in our next episode, but I think feral midlife women are a key contingency in what this world needs right now.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you go ferals. Okay. Let's wrap this up by talking about our last fucks. You know, and I always say like, I'm going to come up with a list of things, but then life happens and I'm like, fuck all of those things. So I'll let you all start if you have any.
I have
last
one I can
fucks.
start with.
Yes,
I'll start
let's
because
hear it.
as our resident man basher, who's always talking about I love to complain about men. That's just one of my hobbies.
You're just holding them accountable. You're not bashing.
Yeah, that's true. But I like the meme. Have you guys seen the meme that goes around that's like, no, if you meet like a man-hating woman, like you know that if she's with a man, he's one of the good ones.
Yeah.
That like
I haven't, but that makes sense.
That's a meme I see all the time. I'm butchering it, but that's the idea. And so my last fuck this week is for my husband, because I do have a husband who supports me in all of my feralness and all of my outspokenness, does not agree with me all the time, does not understand me all the time, but supports the shit out of me. And next week is my birthday and Valentine's Day, and he's taking me away to Vegas, and he planned the whole thing, and I had nothing to do with it, and he did all of that. And so my last fuck is to the good men who really do know how to show up and know how to take accountability, because he's one of them. So that is who my last fuck is for this week.
That is awesome.
Yay. I love that.
Yeah.
How about you, Sandra?
My last fuck this week is for women's anger. I've seen a lot of it this past week with the stuff going on in the Epstein files. I wrote about it on my Substack, and I have felt a lot of it myself. My anger is not only righteous, it is productive. It is the kind of anger that calls people to task, and I am seeing a lot of it out there right now. And that kind of calling people to task is exactly what we need to see transformation in this world. So yes, women, get angry, stay angry, and let's do something with it.
Yay. Yes, angry women fighting the good fight. I love it. I love it.
Mel?
For me, I'm going to give my last fuck, and I know I think I gave EMDR my last fuck previously, but I just finished. I'm officially graduated, no pin included. Unfortunately, if you go through EMDR, they don't give you any awards when you finish.
I'm going to make you a trophy.
You can have friends make you a trophy.
That's right.
But I finished EMDR. It was such an amazing experience to go through. You know, it's a weird thing to say when you're talking about trauma-based therapy, but you don't recognize what you're holding within your body, within your subconscious. You have no idea what you're holding in there, no matter how much work you think you've done, because I have done lots of work on my own. But it is so helpful to have somebody to go through that with you, to help you to weed out all the things that are lingering within, and pull those things out and find a way to move forward in ways that I didn't even recognize I needed. So my last fuck is going to EMDR therapy, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone who has, you know, past traumas that may be holding you back from moving forward. I definitely say reach out to someone and get more information. So yes,
I love
that's
that.
it.
That's a fabulous
Excellent.
last fuck. Also, raise your hand if you've also done EMDR and found it to be life-changing. For anybody just listening, everybody on this podcast raise their hand. So stamp of approval from the whole Tired as Fuck crew. Go EMDR.
So thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed it so much that you will like and follow us on all the platforms that you are listening and watching us on. Make sure that you reach out to us. We definitely want to hear from you. We love hearing your experiences of what you're hearing and you sharing parts of who you are, because that's why we built this platform. So make sure to join us on the next episode, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Inside.